the marriage alliance. Ambassador Sarah stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Crithian High Council chamber, watching warships limp back to the orbital docks. Each vessel bore the scars of battle: scorched hulls, missing weapon arrays, and shattered armor plating. 18 months of war had reduced the pride of the Crithian Confederation fleet to a collection of damaged survivors. Ambassador Sarah, we need your decision. High Chancellor Voron's voice cut through her thoughts. She turned to face the 7 council members seated in their ceremonial positions. Their crystalline skin, normally a brilliant azure, had dulled to pale blue, a physical manifestation of their stress and exhaustion. Sarah had served the Confederation for 20 years as their chief diplomat. She had negotiated treaties with 43 species, resolved border disputes, and prevented countless conflicts. But nothing in her career had prepared her for this moment. You want me to marry one of them, she said, keeping her voice steady. A human. Chancellor Voron nodded slowly. The humans have proposed a marriage alliance. They claim it will unite our peoples, transform enemies into family. Our military advisors have analyzed every alternative. This is our best option for survival. Sarah felt her chest tighten. She had seen humans before, during the failed peace negotiations 6 months ago. They looked strange to her eyes: soft flesh instead of crystalline skin, round pupils instead of vertical slits, hair growing from their heads in wild patterns. They seemed fragile, almost delicate. Yet those fragile creatures had fought the Crithian military to a standstill. What do we know about their demands? Sarah asked. Very few, replied Councillor Thress, the military liaison. They want a high-ranking Crithian official. Someone with genuine authority. The marriage must be real, not ceremonial. And they want the chosen individual to live on Earth for at least 5 years. 5 years. Sarah had never left Crithian space for more than a few months. Earth was 3 weeks away by the fastest ships. She would be isolated, alone among aliens who had killed thousands of her people. Why would they propose this? She asked. What strategic advantage does a marriage give them? Councillor Thress pulled up a holographic display. Our analysts believe they want a hostage. Someone they can use as leverage if we break the treaty. Others think they want to study us, learn our weaknesses through close observation. And what do you think, Chancellor? Voron was silent for a long moment. I think they genuinely want peace. Our intelligence reports suggest the humans lost nearly as many ships as we did. Their colonies near our border have been evacuated. Their economy has shifted entirely to war production. They're exhausted just as we are. Sarah walked closer to the council members. Then why not simply agree to a ceasefire? Why this elaborate marriage arrangement? Because they don't trust promises, Voron said quietly. They want bonds, connections, something deeper than words on a treaty document. He stood and approached her. Sarah, you've always put the Confederation first. You've sacrificed your personal life for diplomatic duty. I wouldn't ask this of you if there was any other way. Sarah looked at each council member in turn. She saw desperation in their eyes. The Crithian Confederation had existed for 3,000 years, expanding steadily across 97 star systems. They had absorbed or conquered 26 species. They had never faced an enemy they couldn't defeat or outlast. Until now. I volunteer, Sarah said. I'll do it. The relief in the room was palpable. Voron placed his hand over his heart in the traditional Crithian gesture of gratitude. The Confederation will honor your sacrifice forever. 3 weeks later, Sarah found herself aboard a diplomatic shuttle approaching Waypoint Station, a neutral facility floating in the empty space between human and Crithian territory. Her assistant, Talon, sat beside her reviewing cultural briefings on a data tablet. Humans shake hands as a greeting, Talon said, reading from his notes. They consider direct eye contact a sign of honesty. They smile to indicate friendliness, though they also smile when nervous or uncomfortable, which can be confusing. What about their military structure? Sarah asked. Talon swiped to a different file. Highly decentralized compared to ours. They have something called a chain of command, but individual units often make independent tactical decisions. It seems chaotic, but somehow it works for them. The shuttle docked with a soft clang. Sarah straightened her formal robes, deep violet with silver threading that marked her diplomatic rank. She had prepared herself for a formal military reception, perhaps armed guards and security protocols. Instead, when the airlock opened, she saw a small group of humans in casual uniforms, talking and laughing among themselves. They looked like friends meeting for a social gathering, not representatives of a military power. One of them stepped forward. He was tall by human standards, with short dark hair graying at the temples and warm hazel eyes. He wore a simple uniform with minimal decorations, though Sarah recognized the insignia of a diplomatic corps commander. "Ambassador Sarah," he said, and his accent was softer than she expected. "I'm Marcus Reed. It's truly an honor to meet you." He extended his hand. Sarah had practiced this human custom. She reached out and grasped his hand. His skin was warm, softer than crystalline flesh, and his grip was gentle but firm. He shook once, smiled, and released her hand. "Commander Reed," she replied, keeping her tone formal. "I hope this alliance brings lasting peace to both our civilizations." "That's the goal," Marcus said, and his smile seemed genuine. "Please call me Marcus. We're going to be spending a lot of time together. Might as well be comfortable." Behind him, an older human woman with gray hair stepped forward. "I'm Ambassador Chin, Human Diplomatic Liaison. We've prepared quarters for you and your assistant. I hope everything meets your needs." Over the next 5 days, Sarah met with human diplomats, cultural advisors, and military observers. What confused her most was their attitude. They didn't act like people who had been at war. They were relaxed, friendly, almost casual. When she asked Marcus about the conflict, he simply shrugged. "Wars are unfortunate," he said, "especially when they're based on misunderstandings. But that's behind us now." "Did you lose people?" Sarah asked. "In the fighting?" His smile faded. "I did. Good people. Friends I'd known for years." Then the smile returned, but different now, sadder, heavier. "That's why I volunteered for this. I didn't want to lose anyone else." The wedding ceremony combined traditions from both cultures. Sarah wore white as humans did, but with Crithian symbols woven in silver thread throughout the fabric. Marcus wore his formal diplomatic uniform. They exchanged vows in both languages, promising unity, respect, and partnership. When it came time for the human custom of kissing, Sarah felt uncertain. Crithians didn't kiss, they touched foreheads in their bonding ceremony. But Marcus was patient and gentle, and the kiss was brief and respectful. At the reception, Sarah watched humans and Crithians mingle awkwardly. The humans drank something called champagne and moved to music. The Crithian guests stood formally, uncomfortable with such casual celebration. Sarah needed air. She stepped onto an observation deck overlooking the border zone where the war had been fought. Through the transparent aluminum, she could see empty space dotted with distant stars. It looked peaceful now. "Beautiful. Impressive view," a voice said behind her. She turned. A human military officer stood there, a man with silver hair and sharp blue eyes. He held a glass of champagne and wore a uniform marked with combat ribbons. "General Harrison," he introduced himself. "I served in the border campaigns. Lost a lot of good soldiers out there." "I'm sorry for your losses," Sarah said automatically. Harrison nodded. "War's hell. Always is." He took a drink. "But it's over now, thank God." Another officer joined them, younger with red hair and freckles across his nose. "General, you coming back to the party?" "In a minute, Captain Stevens," Harrison said. Then he lowered his voice, speaking to the younger officer but not quite quietly enough. "She has no idea what they avoided. What we could have done." Stevens glanced at Sarah, then back to Harrison. "Probably better that way. Let them think it was a fair fight." They walked away, leaving Sarah frozen. What did that mean? What had her people avoided? She returned to the reception and watched Marcus laughing with his friends. He caught her eye and smiled, waving her over. She went to him, and he placed his arm around her waist in the human gesture of affection. "Having a good time?" he asked. "Yes," she lied. But doubt had planted itself in her mind. The humans were too relaxed, too casual about a war that had devastated both sides. It was as if the conflict had been nothing to them, as if they could have ended it whenever they chose. As the celebration continued, Sarah made a decision. She would learn everything about humans. She would discover their secrets. She would understand why they had truly agreed to this peace. And she had a terrible feeling that when she learned the truth, everything she thought she knew about the galaxy would change forever. The next day, Sarah and Marcus boarded a human transport ship bound for Earth. As they left Waypoint Station behind, Sarah looked out at the stars and wondered what kind of civilization she had just married into. The humans seemed kind, peaceful, even gentle. But General Harrison's words echoed in her mind. She has no idea what they avoided. What had the Crithian Confederation avoided? And more importantly, what were humans really capable of? Sarah intended to find out, no matter how long it took or what truths she uncovered. She was no longer just Ambassador Sarah of the Crithian Confederation. She was now Sarah Reed, wife of a human diplomat, and she had just stepped into a mystery that would reshape her understanding of the universe itself. At the reception, Sarah watched humans and Crithians mingle awkwardly. The humans drank something called champagne and moved to music. The Crithian guests stood formally, uncomfortable with such casual celebration. Sarah needed air. She stepped onto an observation deck overlooking the border zone where the war had been fought. Through the transparent aluminum, she could see empty space dotted with distant stars. It looked peaceful now. Beautiful. Impressive view, a voice said behind her. She turned. A human military officer stood there, a man with silver hair and sharp blue eyes. He held a glass of champagne and wore a uniform marked with combat ribbons. General Harrison, he introduced himself. I served in the border campaigns. Lost a lot of good soldiers out there. I'm sorry for your losses, Sarah said automatically. Harrison nodded. War's hell. Always is. He took a drink. But it's over now, thank God. Another officer joined them, younger with red hair and freckles across his nose. General, you coming back to the party? In a minute, Captain Stevens, Harrison said. Then he lowered his voice, speaking to the younger officer but not quite quietly enough. She has no idea what they avoided. What we could have done. Stevens glanced at Sarah, then back to Harrison. Probably better that way. Let them think it was a fair fight. They walked away, leaving Sarah frozen. What did that mean? What had her people avoided? She returned to the reception and watched Marcus laughing with his friends. He caught her eye and smiled, waving her over. She went to him, and he placed his arm around her waist in the human gesture of affection. Having a good time? He asked. Yes, she lied. But doubt had planted itself in her mind. The humans were too relaxed, too casual about a war that had devastated both sides. It was as if the conflict had been nothing to them, as if they could have ended it whenever they chose. As the celebration continued, Sarah made a decision. She would learn everything about humans. She would discover their secrets. She would understand why they had truly agreed to this peace. And she had a terrible feeling that when she learned the truth, everything she thought she knew about the galaxy would change forever. The next day, Sarah and Marcus boarded a human transport ship bound for Earth. As they left Waypoint Station behind, Sarah looked out at the stars and wondered what kind of civilization she had just married into. The humans seemed kind, peaceful, even gentle. But General Harrison's words echoed in her mind. She has no idea what they avoided. What had the Crithian Confederation avoided? And more importantly, what were humans really capable of? Sarah intended to find out, no matter how long it took or what truths she uncovered. She was no longer just Ambassador Sarah of the Crithian Confederation. She was now Sarah Reed, wife of a human diplomat, and she had just stepped into a mystery that would reshape her understanding of the universe itself. The terrible truth. The view of Earth from orbit took Sarah's breath away. She had expected a militarized world, covered in weapons factories and military installations. Instead, she saw blue oceans stretching across 70% of the planet's surface, green and brown continents wrapped in swirling white clouds, and cities that glittered like scattered diamonds in the sunlight. It looked peaceful, almost pristine. Welcome home, Marcus said beside her as their shuttle descended through the atmosphere. Home. The word felt strange. This wasn't her home. Crithia Prime was her home, with its crystalline architecture and violet skies. But this was her life now for at least the next 5 years. Marcus's residence was located in Geneva, near the human diplomatic headquarters. The apartment was modest but comfortable, with large windows overlooking Lake Geneva and the Alps beyond. Talon moved through the rooms, scanning for surveillance devices out of habit. It's clean, he reported in Crithian. No active monitoring systems that I can detect. They wouldn't need to hide them, Sarah replied in the same language. We're guests here. They could monitor us openly if they wanted. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Everything okay? I know it's not what you're used to, but I hope it'll be comfortable. It's fine, Sarah said, switching to human standard language. Thank you. Over the following weeks, Marcus showed her around Geneva and the surrounding areas. Sarah kept expecting to see evidence of military might, training facilities, weapons manufacturing, soldiers everywhere. Instead, she saw parks where human children played, markets where people sold food and art, museums celebrating culture and history. The humans she met were friendly, curious about her crystalline features, but not hostile or afraid. Where are your military bases? She finally asked Marcus during a walk along the lake. He looked puzzled. There are some outside the city. Switzerland is mostly a diplomatic zone now. Most military facilities are located away from population centers. Why? Because people don't want to live next to weapons depots and training grounds, he said with a shrug. We separate civilian life from military operations as much as possible. Sarah thought about Crithian worlds, where military installations dominated major cities, where martial culture permeated every aspect of society. Is that common among human worlds? Pretty standard, yes. We learned a long time ago that militarizing your entire society leads to problems. Constant conflict, economic drain, social stress. He paused, looking at her carefully. Is it different for Crithians? Very different, she admitted. A week later, a human woman named Dr. Lisa Park arrived at the apartment. She was young, energetic, with black hair and bright eyes behind thin-framed glasses. She carried several data tablets and a warm smile. I've been assigned as your cultural liaison, Lisa explained. Basically, I'm here to help you understand human society, answer questions, and make your transition easier. Sarah liked Lisa immediately. She was direct, honest, and treated Sarah as an equal rather than a curiosity. Over the next month, Lisa took Sarah to libraries, museums, and historical sites. She explained human art, music, literature, and philosophy. But it was the history lessons that disturbed Sarah most. They sat in Lisa's office at the university where she taught xenoanthropology. Lisa pulled up a holographic timeline that stretched across the entire wall. Human civilization goes back about 12,000 years, Lisa began. Recorded history covers about 10,000 of those years. And we've been fighting each other almost continuously throughout that entire period. Sarah stared at the timeline. It was covered in red markers indicating conflicts. Hundreds of them. Thousands. This can't be accurate, Sarah said. You're telling me humans fought this many wars against each other? That's just the major ones, Lisa said matter-of-factly. Conflicts involving at least 10,000 casualties or significant territorial changes. If we included every battle, raid, and skirmish, we'd need a much bigger wall. Sarah felt cold despite the comfortable temperature. Why? Why would you fight each other so much? Resources, territory, religion, politics, ideology, revenge, pride. Sometimes just because we could. Lisa zoomed in on one section of the timeline. See this? World War II. 60 million dead. World War I 20 million. The Mongol conquest 40 million. The Inlushan rebellion in China 36 million. The numbers were staggering. The entire Crithian human war had killed perhaps 200,000 on both sides combined. These single human conflicts had death tolls in the tens of millions. But you seem so peaceful now, Sarah protested. We learned, Lisa said simply. After we developed nuclear weapons and nearly destroyed ourselves several times, we got better at diplomacy. We created international laws, conflict resolution systems, and mutual defense treaties. We still have disagreements, but we've learned to manage them without total war. That night, Sarah lay awake in bed beside Marcus, listening to him breathe softly. She thought about what Lisa had shown her. 10,000 years of warfare. Humans killing humans by the millions, developing increasingly terrible weapons, perfecting the art of destruction. And the Crithian Confederation had fought these people for 18 months and considered it a victory to survive. The next week, Marcus invited her to observe a military training exercise at a facility outside Geneva. Sarah expected a formal demonstration like Crithian military displays. Organized, predictable, designed to show strength and discipline. Instead, she watched controlled chaos. Human soldiers moved through a simulated urban environment in small teams. They didn't advance in formation. They scattered, used buildings for cover, attacked from unexpected angles. One team faked a retreat, drawing the opposing force into a prepared ambush. Another team split up, with half providing suppressing fire while the other half flanked around. We call it asymmetric warfare, Marcus explained. Fighting in complex environments where traditional tactics don't work. You have to be creative, adaptable, and unpredictable. General Harrison stood nearby, observing his troops with a critical eye. We've been refining urban combat techniques for about 4,000 years, he said. You learn things. How to use every building as a fortress. How to turn every alley into a kill zone. How to fight when you're outnumbered, outgunned, or surrounded. This is training, Sarah said slowly. For what enemy? Harrison glanced at Marcus, then back to Sarah. Any enemy. We train to fight in every possible environment under every possible condition. Desert, Arctic, jungle, ocean, space, underground. If humans can survive there, we've probably fought there. Later, Marcus took her to a memorial site in Geneva. It was a simple stone wall carved with names and dates, stretching for nearly 100 meters. "What is this?" Sarah asked. "Species that humans have outlasted," Marcus said quietly. "Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo erectus, Homo heidelbergensis. All extinct now. We're the only human species left." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "You killed them?" "Some we absorbed through interbreeding. Modern humans carry Neanderthal DNA. But yes, some we fought. Some we outcompete for resources. Some died from diseases we carried. Natural selection is brutal, Sarah. We're the survivors of a very long, very harsh process." The breakthrough came 4 months after Sarah arrived on Earth. She was alone in the apartment while Marcus attended meetings. Her curiosity finally overcame her sense of propriety. She accessed Marcus's personal files. They weren't even encrypted. Marcus had nothing to hide. She opened his military service record and started reading. What she found made her hands tremble. Marcus had served in the Crithian border war, yes. But his record also showed extensive combat experience in 3 other conflicts before that. Training certifications in 62 different weapon systems. Expert ratings in zero-gravity combat, atmospheric combat, ground assault, and naval operations. Languages, 8 fluent, 15 conversational. Survival training in every major environment type. This wasn't the record of a diplomat. This was the record of a professional warrior who had been extensively trained in the art of killing. She dug deeper into the public military databases. The information was freely available, not even classified. Humans had fought more than 15,000 documented wars in their recorded history. They had developed weapons ranging from sharpened stones to antimatter bombs. They had created elaborate rules for warfare. The Geneva Conventions, the Terran Accords, the Treaty of New Beijing, all designed to limit how they fought, what weapons they could use, and when they could escalate. Then Sarah found a document that made her blood run cold. It was labeled Rules of Engagement, Non-Human Conflicts, Classification Protocol. She opened it with shaking hands. It was an escalation protocol. 50 levels, each clearly defined with specific authorized responses. At level 1, humans used minimal force with restricted weaponry. At level 10, they deployed their main military fleets. At level 25, they authorized total warfare with no restrictions on conventional weapons. At level 40, they activated something called Exterminatus Protocol. At level 50, the document simply read, Complete extinction of hostile species. Requires unanimous approval of the Security Council and the Secretary General. Sarah scrolled down to the historical examples section. She found the Crithian conflict listed there. Her hands froze over the display. Classification, Level 4 engagement. Authorized response, border defense with restricted weaponry. Fleet deployment limited to 30% of available forces. No strategic weapons authorized. No deep strike operations authorized. Objective, defensive containment until diplomatic resolution achieved. Level 4. The Crithian Confederation had fought with everything they had. Their entire fleet, their most advanced weapons, their best commanders. They had thrown themselves at humanity with full force. And the humans had classified it as a level 4 engagement, using less than a third of their available military strength with restricted weaponry. Sarah ran to the bathroom and vomited. When she emerged, Marcus was home. He saw her face and immediately looked concerned. "Sarah, what's wrong?" "I read your files," she whispered. "All of them. The military databases. The escalation protocols." He didn't look angry. He looked sad. "And now you know. You were holding back the entire time." Her voice was barely audible. "You could have destroyed us." Marcus sat down heavily on the couch. "Could have, yes. Would have if you'd pushed us far enough. But you didn't. Your High Chancellor agreed to negotiate. He agreed to peace. So we never had to show you what we're really capable of." "Why?" Sera demanded. "Why hide it? Why not just threaten us with your full strength from the beginning?" "Because that would make us the monsters everyone fears," Marcus said quietly. "We learned a long time ago that might doesn't make right. Just because we can destroy someone doesn't mean we should. So we created rules. We limited ourselves. We always try to find peaceful solutions first." He looked at her with those hazel eyes that had seemed so warm and kind. Now she saw the weight behind them, the burden of knowledge. "I volunteered to marry you because I lost 300 soldiers in those border skirmishes. 300 friends. And I knew that if the war continued, if it escalated to level 10 or level 15, I would lose everything. Your people would lose everything. Better to build a bridge than to burn one." Sarah sat beside him, her mind reeling. What would have happened if we'd pushed harder? If we'd refused to negotiate? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Level 5 would have been unrestricted fleet deployment. Level 7 would have authorized deep strike operations against your military infrastructure. Level 10 would have brought in our strategic weapons, things we haven't used in 200 years. Level 15. He trailed off. Tell me, Sarah insisted. Level 15 would have been the systematic destruction of your military capacity across all Crithian worlds simultaneously. You would have been left defenseless. Level 20 would have been occupation. Level 25 would have been forced integration into human space. He looked at her. We would have dismantled your entire civilization and rebuilt it under our supervision. And beyond that? You don't want to know about beyond that, Marcus said softly. Please trust me on this. But Sarah had to know. Over the next weeks she researched obsessively. She found records of species that had fought humans at higher escalation levels. The Vector Collective had fought humans 70 years ago. It had been classified as a level 12 engagement. The Vectors had been a proud warrior culture spanning 40 systems. Now they controlled 6 systems, their military permanently disbanded, their society completely restructured under human oversight. The Hive Nexus had been worse. A parasitic species that consumed other civilizations, they had attacked human colony worlds without warning. Humanity had responded at level 18. The Hive Nexus no longer existed. Not their government, not their military, not even their homeworld. Humanity had sterilized an entire species from the galaxy. Sarah found an interview with Ambassador Krall, a surviving Vector diplomat. She contacted him requesting a meeting. He agreed immediately. They met in a cafe in Geneva. Krall was a massive creature, nearly 3 meters tall with thick armor plating and 4 arms. But he moved slowly, carefully, like someone who had learned to appear non-threatening. You want to know what it's like to fight humans? Krall said. It wasn't a question. I can see it in your posture. The same fear we all felt when we learned the truth. Please, Sarah said. Tell me what happened to your people. Krall's translator box made a sound like a sigh. 70 years ago, the Vector Collective controlled 40 systems. We had conquered 18 species. We thought ourselves invincible. Then we encountered humanity at their mining colony on Kepler 442b. We attacked. We killed thousands of human miners. We thought we had sent a message of strength. What happened? At first, nothing. The humans evacuated their nearby colonies. We thought they were running away. We occupied 12 more human systems over the next 6 months. We won every battle. Every single one. Krall's eyes darkened. Then we hit level 12. What changed? Everything changed. Suddenly the humans stopped retreating. Their fleets appeared simultaneously across all 12 occupied systems. We'd been fighting what we thought was their full military. It was less than 5%. When they deployed their actual fleets, we realized we'd been fighting children with practice weapons. Krall's voice became quieter. They destroyed our entire military in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. A military we'd built over 5 centuries. Gone. Then they occupied our worlds, dismantled our government, and restructured our entire society. We're not allowed to have a military anymore. We're not allowed to develop certain technologies. Human observers live on every Vector world, monitoring us, ensuring we comply with the peace terms. But you're alive, Sarah said. Your species survived. Because we surrendered immediately once we understood what we faced. The Hive Nexus didn't. They thought they could fight to the end. Krall looked directly at her. There is no Hive Nexus anymore. No survivors. No remnants. Humanity erased them completely. Do you understand what I'm telling you? These gentle, peaceful humans you see smiling and laughing? They're capable of genocide. And they have rules for when it's acceptable. Sarah felt numb. How do you live with this knowledge? We learn. We adapt. We teach our children that humans are not our enemies anymore, but we also teach them never, ever to provoke humanity. We live in peace because we understand the alternative. That night, Sarah confronted Marcus. I spoke with Ambassador Krall today. He told me about the Vector War. Marcus nodded slowly. Level 12. That was before my time, but it's taught in every military academy as an example of proportional response. Proportional? Sarah's voice rose. You destroyed their entire civilization. We destroyed their military and their government, Marcus corrected. We left their people alive, their culture intact, their worlds habitable. We could have done much worse. We chose not to. He stood and walked to the window looking out over Geneva. Sarah, Do you know why humans created these escalation protocols? To categorize your violence? To limit it, Marcus said firmly. Before we had these rules, we fought total wars by default. Every conflict was all-out destruction until someone was completely defeated. Millions died in every war. After we nearly destroyed ourselves several times, we realized we needed structure. Rules. Ways to fight that didn't automatically lead to extinction. He turned to face her. The escalation protocols force us to use minimal force necessary to achieve our objectives. We can't jump straight to planet-killing weapons. We have to try diplomacy first, then limited engagement, then conventional warfare, and only if absolutely necessary do we escalate further. It's not perfect, but it's saved countless lives. Including mine, Sarah said quietly. Including yours. Including everyone in the Crithian Confederation. Including my own people. Marcus walked back to her. I know this is terrifying. I know we're frightening when you see what we're truly capable of. But please understand, we don't want to be monsters. We work very, very hard not to be monsters. That's why we proposed the marriage alliance. That's why we always try peace first. Sarah looked at this human she had married. This warrior disguised as a diplomat. This member of a species that had perfected the art of controlled violence over 10,000 years. And she realized something profound. You're not hiding your strength out of deception, she said slowly. You're hiding it out of mercy. Yes, Marcus said simply. Over the following months, Sarah's perspective shifted. She watched humans more carefully, seeing beyond their friendly surfaces. She noticed the discipline underlying their casual behavior. She saw the vast infrastructure they maintained, not just military but diplomatic, cultural, scientific. They didn't conquer species. They integrated them, learned from them, formed alliances. She met ambassadors from dozens of species living peacefully in human space. Some had fought humanity and lost. Others had joined voluntarily, seeking protection or opportunity. All of them spoke of humanity with respect tinged with wariness. They're the galaxy's gentle giants, one ambassador told her. As long as you don't threaten them or their allies, they're wonderful neighbors. But if you cross certain lines. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Sarah began writing reports back to the Crithian High Council. Not just diplomatic updates, but detailed analyses of human society, military capability, and philosophy. She wanted her people to understand what they had avoided, what they had survived by choosing peace. A year after arriving on Earth, Sarah attended a Galactic Council meeting as a human observer. It was her first time seeing the wider galactic community since her marriage. Representatives from 43 species gathered to discuss trade, security, and cooperation. When humanity's representative, General Harrison, rose to speak about a proposed joint security initiative, several ambassadors exchanged skeptical looks. Sarah saw one representative from the Quen Imperium whisper to another, "Humans overestimate their importance. They're barely a century into space travel." Sarah felt anger flash through her. She stood, surprising everyone including Marcus who sat beside her. "If I may speak," she said formally. The council chair recognized her. Ambassador Sarah Reed, Observer for Humanity. "I want to share something with this council," Sarah said, her voice carrying across the chamber. 18 months ago, my people were at war with humanity. We thought we were evenly matched. We thought we understood our enemy. We were completely wrong." She had the council's full attention now. "Humanity fought my people at level 4 engagement. That means they used less than 1/3 of their available military force with significant weapon restrictions. My people threw everything we had at them and barely survived. If they had escalated to level 10, we would have been defeated in weeks. At level 15, our entire civilization would have been dismantled. At level 25. She paused. At level 25 and beyond, the Crithian species might have ceased to exist. The chamber was silent. Some of you think humans are weak because they seek peace. Some of you think they're inexperienced because they're young. You're wrong. Humanity has been perfecting warfare for 10,000 years. They have fought more wars than the rest of this council combined. They have survived extinction events, planetary catastrophes, and their own worst impulses. They are not weak. They are choosing mercy. She looked directly at the Quen representative. I suggest we all remember that distinction. Weakness can be exploited. Mercy is a gift that can be withdrawn. The meeting continued, but the atmosphere had changed. Sarah saw new respect in the eyes of several ambassadors. Others looked thoughtful, perhaps reconsidering their assessment of humanity. After the meeting, Marcus pulled her aside. "That was quite a speech." "It was the truth," Sarah said. This council needs to understand what you are, what you're capable of. Not to fear you, but to appreciate that your restraint is a choice, not a limitation. Marcus smiled, and this time Sarah saw both the warmth and the steel behind it. That's exactly right. Thank you for understanding. That night, Sarah stood on the balcony of their apartment, looking at the stars. Somewhere out there was Krithia Prime, her homeworld. She missed it. But she had a purpose here now, a mission beyond her marriage vows. She would be a bridge between her people and humanity. She would help the galaxy understand these terrifying, merciful, impossibly complicated beings called humans. She thought about the escalation protocols, those 50 levels of carefully calibrated violence. She thought about humanity's endless wars with themselves, their capacity for both terrible destruction and incredible compassion. She thought about Marcus and the 300 friends he'd lost, and how he'd chosen peace over vengeance. The universe was full of warrior species. The galaxy had known thousands of civilizations that prided themselves on military strength. But humanity was different. They didn't just know how to fight. They knew when not to fight. They knew how to win without destroying. They knew how to turn enemies into allies. Sarah finally understood why no empire dared to challenge humanity. Not because of their weapons or their fleets or their advanced technology, but because humanity had learned the hardest lesson any species could learn, that true strength lay not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to choose peace when you had the power to wage war. Sarah? Marcus called from inside. You okay? She turned and smiled at her husband, this warrior diplomat, this representative of a species that had climbed from caves to stars while fighting themselves every step of the way. Yes, she said. I'm okay. I'm exactly where I need to be. And for the first time since leaving Krithia Prime, Sarah truly meant it.